Today, our story is called Kongjwi and Patjwi, a traditional Korean folktale. At the beginning, you may notice something familiar, something that might remind you of Cinderella. But this story will soon take a different path, one that is quieter, deeper, and unexpected. So now, let us travel to a quiet village in Old Korea, where the gentle story of Kongjwi begins. Long ago, in a peaceful village surrounded by green fields and soft rolling hills, there lived a kind and patient girl named Kongjwi. She lived with her father in a small house, with a straw roof and wooden doors that creaked softly in the wind. In those days, life was simple. In the early mornings, smoke rose slowly from kitchen chimneys, and the distant sound of roosters drifted through the cool air. Kongjwi helped her father with small chores, and although they were not wealthy, their home was filled with quiet peace. But one day, everything began to change. Kongjwi's father returned home with a new wife and her daughter Patjwi. "From now on," he said gently, "we will live together as one family." Kongjwi bowed her head politely. "Welcome to our home." But behind the stepmother's soft smile, something colder was quietly waiting. At first, the days passed without trouble. But whenever Kongjwi's father left the house, the stepmother's voice would grow sharp and cold. "Kongjwi," she would call, "why are you standing there? The yard is still dirty." Patjwi would fold her arms and add, "And the laundry is not done either." Soon, Kongjwi was given endless work. She carried heavy buckets of water from the well again and again. She washed piles of clothes by the stream, her hands growing cold in the water. She chopped firewood until her arms ached and swept the yard from morning until night. No matter how hard she worked, Patjwi always found something to complain about. "Mother, look," she would say with a sigh, "Kongjwi is being lazy again." The stepmother would glare at her. "Is that true?" And before Kongjwi could answer, the scolding would begin. Yet through all of this, Kongjwi never allowed bitterness to grow in her heart. She worked quietly and spoke gently, even to those who treated her unkindly. As the years passed, the villagers began to notice her quiet kindness. Then one spring, news spread through the village. A young scholar had passed the royal examination and would soon return as the new magistrate. The villagers whispered with excitement, "Perhaps he will choose a bride." When the stepmother heard this, her eyes brightened with ambition. "A magistrate," she murmured. "That would be a fine husband." She turned to Patjwi. "You must marry him." Patjwi smiled confidently. "Of course." From that day on, the stepmother watched Kongjwi closely, never giving her a chance to be seen. But fate often moves in quiet and unexpected ways. One cool afternoon, Kongjwi walked through the forest, gathering fallen branches for firewood. The path curved gently between tall trees, and sunlight slipped through the leaves like scattered gold. As she bent down to lift a bundle of sticks, she heard footsteps nearby. A young man stepped onto the path. He wore simple clothes, but his posture was calm and composed. For a moment, they both stood in quiet surprise. "I'm sorry," Kongjwi said softly, bowing her head. "There is no need to apologize," the young man replied with a gentle smile. He glanced at the bundle of wood in her arms. "That looks heavy," he said. "May I help you?" Kongjwi shook her head lightly. "Thank you, but I will be all right." Their conversation was brief, yet something warm passed between them. As they parted, the young man turned back once more. "I hope we meet again," he said. Kongjwi only smiled and continued on her way. Not long after, a great celebration was announced at her uncle's house. The whole family was invited. Music, laughter, and warm lights would fill the evening. But the stepmother had other plans. On the morning of the celebration, Patjwi dressed in bright silk and admired herself. "How do I look?" she asked. "Perfect," the stepmother said. Kongjwi stood quietly nearby, still wearing her simple clothes. Just before leaving, the stepmother turned to her. "Oh, Kongjwi," she said sweetly, though her eyes were cold. "You may come later, after you finish a few small tasks." She pointed toward the yard. There, an overwhelming amount of work was waiting. A large jar needed to be filled with water. Piles of laundry lay beside the well. Firewood had to be chopped. Rice had to be cleaned. It was far more than one person could finish in a day. Patjwi laughed softly. "Try not to be too slow." Their laughter faded as they left the house. Kongjwi walked slowly into the yard. She lifted a bucket and began to carry water from the well. Again and again, she poured water into the large jar. But something was wrong. The water level never rose. She leaned closer and saw a small hole at the bottom. Each time she filled it, the water slipped away. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Her arms grew heavy. Her breathing slowed. At last, she sat beside the jar and quietly covered her face. "I only wish to go once," she whispered. Tears fell softly, and then a gentle warmth filled the air. A soft light appeared beside her. From within that light, a compassionate bodhisattva stepped forward. "Kongjwi," the voice said gently. Startled, she looked up. "I have seen your heart," the bodhisattva said. "You have endured much, and yet you remain kind." The bodhisattva touched the jar. At once, a small frog appeared and settled into the hole, sealing it. "Now the water will remain." A quiet wind moved through the yard. The work began to change. The laundry was washed. The firewood was prepared. The rice was cleaned. The impossible tasks were finished. Then the bodhisattva placed beautiful clothes and delicate flower shoes into Kongjwi's hands. "You should not miss the evening," the voice said. Kongjwi bowed deeply. "Thank you, truly." She hurried toward the celebration. The sky glowed softly in the evening light, but as she crossed a narrow stream, her foot slipped on a smooth stone. One of her shoes fell into the water and drifted away. She searched for a moment, but the current carried it beyond reach. With no time to lose, she continued on her way. And somewhere downstream, a quiet ripple moved across the water. Not long after, the young man who had found the shoe arrived in the village. He was no ordinary traveler. He was the very scholar who had passed the royal examination, now returning as the new magistrate. As he crossed the stream, his eyes caught something resting in the shallow water. A single flower shoe. He picked it up slowly, studying its delicate shape. "This must belong to someone," he said quietly. "Someone kind." He brought the shoe back to the village and began to search. House after house, he asked the same question: "Does this shoe belong to you?" But each answer was the same: "No, it is not mine." At last, a villager spoke. "There is a girl named Kongjwi," the villager said softly. "She is kind and gentle. Perhaps it belongs to her." When Kongjwi tried on the shoe, it fit perfectly. The magistrate smiled. "I knew it." Soon, a wedding was held. Lanterns glowed warmly in the night. Music drifted through the village, and for the first time in her life, Kongjwi felt safe and quietly happy. But not everyone shared her joy. The stepmother and Patjwi watched from the shadows, their hearts filled with jealousy, dark and heavy. "How could this happen?" Patjwi whispered, her voice trembling with anger. "She was meant to remain a servant forever." Their jealousy slowly turned into something colder, something dangerous. One day, when Kongjwi returned alone to visit her old home, the stepmother and Patjwi carried out a cruel plan. Through deception and violence, they ended her life. Silently, they carried her body to a hidden pond deep within the forest and left her there beneath the still water. With the help of dark magic, Patjwi took Kongjwi's place. Her face changed, her voice softened, and she stood beside the magistrate, pretending to be the one he loved. Time passed. Yet something felt wrong. In the quiet pond where Kongjwi had been left, a single lotus flower began to bloom. It rose gently from the water, pure and radiant. Day after day it remained untouched, shining softly beneath the sunlight. Patjwi grew uneasy. "I don't like that flower," she said sharply. "Remove it." A servant was sent to cut it down. But as she reached for the flower, something made her pause. It felt peaceful, sacred. Instead of throwing it away, she brought it back and placed it in a small vase inside her room. That night, as moonlight filled the quiet space, the flower began to glow. Softly, gently, a figure appeared beside it. It was Kongjwi. Her voice was calm, yet filled with sorrow. "Please," she whispered, "help me." The servant gasped, her heart trembling. Kongjwi spoke of everything that had happened, of betrayal, of darkness, of the truth that had been hidden. At dawn, the servant rushed to the magistrate. "My lord," she said, her voice shaking, "there is something you must know." The magistrate listened, his expression growing still. Without hesitation, he went to the forest. At the pond, he searched the quiet water. And there, beneath the surface, he found her. He fell to his knees. "This cannot be," he whispered. Grief filled the air around him. At that moment, a soft light appeared once more. The compassionate bodhisattva stood beside him. "Her kindness has not been forgotten," the voice said gently. A warm light spread across the water, and slowly, very slowly, Kongjwi's life returned. Her eyes opened, her breath returned, and once again she stood beneath the quiet sky. The truth was revealed. The stepmother and Patjwi's deception could no longer remain hidden. The magistrate prepared to punish them, but Kongjwi reached out and gently touched his arm. "Please," she said softly, "let kindness be stronger than anger." Yet fear had already taken hold of them. That very night, they fled into the countryside. Dark clouds gathered overhead. Thunder rolled across the sky. A sudden flash of lightning split the night, and a falling tree crashed down upon them. Their cruelty had finally come to an end. Peace returned to the village, and at last, Kongjwi lived the life she had always deserved. A life filled with warmth, gentleness, and quiet happiness. The Clever Ox and the Tiger, a Korean folktale. Long ago, in a quiet mountain village, there lived a poor farmer. He owned 2 oxen. One, a strong yellow ox, calm, steady, wise. The other, a black ox, younger, faster, but easily frightened. From sunrise to sunset, they worked side by side, pulling the plow, carrying heavy loads, and at the end of each day, they rested together beneath a tall tree at the edge of the forest. The yellow ox was patient, the black ox worried about everything. Whenever the wind moved too loudly, he would whisper, "Did you hear that?" And the yellow ox would reply, "It is only the wind." One late autumn afternoon, the farmer brought them, near the forest, golden light covered the fields. The air was quiet, peaceful, but deep inside the forest, something was watching. A tiger, hungry, very hungry. His eyes gleamed. A fine meal. He growled softly. Slowly, he stepped out from the shadows. The black ox saw him first. His legs trembled. A tiger? We are finished. The tiger approached, silent, powerful. What should we do? The black ox whispered, but the yellow ox remained calm. Do not run. Do not run? He will eat us. The yellow ox spoke quietly. Not if we use our minds. The tiger stopped, just a few steps away. Well, he said slowly, you two look quite delicious. The black ox nearly collapsed, but the yellow ox stepped forward. Great tiger, he said respectfully, you are the king of these mountains. The tiger paused, pleased. Well, yes, but before you eat us, the yellow ox continued, should you not prove your strength? The tiger narrowed his eyes. Prove it? Yes. A contest. The tiger laughed. You wish to challenge me? The black ox whispered in panic. What are you doing? But the yellow ox did not hesitate. If you win, you may eat us. The tiger grinned. And if you win? You leave us in peace. A pause. The tiger considered. Then, very well. What is the contest? The yellow ox turned toward a massive pine tree. Bring that tree down. The tiger laughed loudly. That tree? I can destroy it in seconds. Please, said the yellow ox. Show us. The tiger stepped forward, claws digging into the bark. He pushed, pulled, roared. The tree shook, but did not fall. He tried again, and again, and again. His breathing grew heavy. At last, he stepped back. Your turn. The black ox whispered, We cannot do this. The yellow ox said quietly, Watch carefully. He walked to the tree, lowered his head, then whispered, When I say push, run. What? Trust me. The yellow ox pressed his horns against the trunk. Ready? A pause. Push. A loud crack echoed. At that exact moment, both oxen turned and ran across the field, fast, faster, as fast as they could. The tiger blinked, confused. He looked at the tree. It had shaken, just slightly, but enough. If that ox, he thought, can shake a tree like that. His eyes widened. Perhaps those horns were far more dangerous than he realized. He stepped back, then another step. Then he turned and ran back into the forest, far away. Meanwhile, the two oxen ran until they reached the village. Safe. The black ox collapsed, breathing hard. We survived. The yellow ox smiled. Yeah? The black ox looked at him. You were not stronger. No. But you were not afraid. The yellow ox spoke gently. Strength is not always in the body. He looked toward the mountains. Sometimes it is in the mind. From that day on, whenever the wind moved through the trees, the black ox no longer trembled, because he had learned. Even the fiercest tiger can be defeated by a clever idea. The Tale of Onggojib. Long ago, in a quiet village resting between gentle green mountains, there lived a man named Onggojib. His house stood larger than all the others. His fields stretched across the valley like a golden sea of grain. His storage barns were always full. Onggojib was a very rich man, but his heart was hard and stubborn. Villagers often spoke of him in quiet voices. Onggojib never shares. Onggojib never smiles. Onggojib never listens to anyone. And sadly, those words were true. Even on the warmest summer days, when neighbors helped one another in the fields, Onggojib kept his gates closed. He trusted no one. He cared for no one. And slowly, people stopped visiting his house at all. One peaceful morning, as the mist slowly lifted from the mountains, an old monk walked down a narrow path toward the village. His steps were slow and steady. His robes moved gently in the breeze. The monk had walked far that day, helping the poor and the hungry. When he reached Onggojib's tall wooden gate, he paused and bowed respectfully. "Good sir," the monk called softly. "May I ask for a small handful of rice? For those who have nothing?" Inside the courtyard, Onggojib was counting bags of grain. When he heard the voice, he stormed toward the gate. His eyes narrowed. "Rice?" he scoffed. "You expect me to give away my rice?" The monk bowed again. "Even a little kindness can warm many hearts," he said gently. But Onggojib's temper rose like a sudden storm. "Beg somewhere else," he shouted. Grabbing a thick wooden stick, he chased the old monk down the road. The monk stumbled, but did not fight back. He only watched Onggojib with quiet sadness. After a moment, the monk slowly turned toward the fields beside the road. He bent down and picked up a bundle of dry straw. The straw crackled softly in his hands. The monk closed his eyes. In a quiet whisper, he spoke ancient words carried from temple to temple for generations. The wind stirred. The straw began to twist. At first, it moved slowly, then faster. The thin stalks bent together. They folded and stretched, slowly, very slowly. The straw began to form the shape of a man. First, the legs, then the arms, then a face. And before long, standing in the dusty road, was a man who looked exactly like Onggojib. The straw man walked calmly toward the house. He pushed open the gate. He stepped into the courtyard, and he sat quietly in the master's chair. Later that afternoon, the real Onggojib returned. He froze when he saw the stranger sitting inside his home. "What is the meaning of this?" he roared. The man in the chair always looked up calmly. "I am Onggojib," he said. "You must be mistaken." Onggojib's face turned red with fury. The servants rushed into the room. The family gathered, and everyone stared in disbelief. Two Onggojibs stood before them. Same height, same voice, same face, even the same tiny mole beside the nose. No one could tell them apart. The straw Onggojib spoke calmly and kindly. But the real Onggojib shouted and cursed. He insulted the servants. He scolded his family. He demanded that everyone throw the stranger out. Soon, the village elders were called to judge. The elders listened quietly. They watched the two men carefully. One spoke with patience. The other burned with anger. At last, the oldest elder nodded. "The calm man must be the real Onggojib," he said, "and this furious man must be the impostor." And so, the real Onggojib was pushed outside his own gate. The door closed behind him. For the first time in his life, he had nowhere to go. Days passed, then weeks, then many long months. Onggojib wandered from village to village. He worked in muddy fields. He carried heavy stones. He slept beneath the wide open sky. Cold winds brushed his face at night, and hunger gnawed at his stomach. For the first time, Onggojib understood what it meant to suffer. He remembered the beggars he had chased away, the travelers he had refused to help, the angry words he had thrown like stones. His stubborn heart slowly began to soften. At last, one quiet evening, Onggojib climbed the mountain path again. The moon shone softly through the trees. At the temple gate, he found the old monk waiting. Onggojib fell to his knees. "I was foolish," he whispered. "I was cruel." His forehead touched the ground. Tears fell quietly onto the stone path. The monk looked down at him, and this time he saw a different man. Without a word, the monk handed him a small sealed scroll. "Go home," the monk said gently. "The truth will return with you." Onggojib walked down the mountain, through the cool night air. When he reached his house and stepped inside, something strange happened. The other Onggojib began to tremble. His arms unraveled, his body loosened, the shape collapsed, and in a quiet, rustling sound, the man turned back into nothing but dry straw. Onggojib stood silently in the room. At last, he was home again, but he was no longer the same man. From that day forward, Onggojib's gates were never closed. The hungry found warm rice, the tired found a place to rest, and the once stubborn Onggojib spent the rest of his life sharing kindness with everyone he met. The Rabbit and the Dragon King. Long ago, in the deep, endless ocean, there stood a magnificent palace beneath the waves. It was the palace of the Dragon King. Coral walls glowed softly, in shades of red and gold. Tall pillars of pearl shimmered like moonlight. Gentle currents carried silver fish through the halls like floating lanterns. Everywhere, there was beauty, peace, and the steady rhythm of the ocean. But one day, something was terribly wrong. The Dragon King had fallen ill. He lay upon his throne, weak and pale. The palace filled with worry. Doctors came from every corner, but none could help. Then, an old sea turtle stepped forward. He bowed deeply and revealed the only cure: the liver of a rabbit. Silence filled the palace. Rabbits lived on land, which meant someone had to leave the sea. The king asked, who would go? No one answered. The court suddenly became busy. No one wished to take the risk. But one turtle stepped forward. "I will go." He was loyal and brave. And so, the journey began. For many days, the turtle swam through dark valleys of the ocean, through cold currents, whispering in the deep. Slowly, he rose toward the surface. At last, he reached the shore. Warm sunlight touched his shell. For the first time in years, the world above felt strange. The air was dry. The ground did not move. But he had a mission. He needed to find a rabbit. Soon, he reached a quiet meadow. Soft grass swayed in the wind. And there, he saw it. A rabbit, bright, light, carefree. The rabbit was enjoying a peaceful afternoon, unaware of what was coming. The turtle approached slowly. He spoke gently. He described a palace beneath the sea, glowing coral, shimmering pearls, endless beauty. Then he mentioned a feast, a grand feast, for a special guest. The rabbit listened, curious, pleased. Slowly, his pride began to grow. The turtle continued. The king wishes to invite the most elegant and intelligent creature from the land. A pause. Then, you. The rabbit stood taller. He liked the sound of that. The invitation felt irresistible. The turtle lowered himself. Come with me. I will guide you safely. The rabbit hesitated, but only for a moment. Then, he agreed. He climbed onto the turtle's back, and together, they slipped into the sea. At first, the journey felt magical. Sunlight danced on the water. The waves sparkled like glass. But slowly, the ocean grew deeper, darker, colder. The land disappeared behind them, and the rabbit began to feel uneasy. He asked how far they had to go. The turtle hesitated. Then, he told the truth. Our king is dying, and there is only one cure. A pause, then, the liver of a rabbit. Silence. The rabbit froze. He understood, too late. He had been deceived. The turtle lowered his head. I am sorry, but I must save my king. For a moment, the ocean was still. Then suddenly, the rabbit laughed. Softly, calmly. I see, he said. But there is a problem. The turtle looked at him. My liver is not with me. It is hidden on land. The turtle blinked. You left it behind? The rabbit nodded. It is far too valuable. A long pause. Then, there is only one solution. The turtle leaned forward. What is it? We must go back and get it. The turtle did not hesitate. He turned and swam back toward the shore. At last, the shoreline appeared, closer and closer. The moment the turtle reached the sand, the rabbit jumped and ran and ran and ran across the grass, through the wind, faster than the turtle could ever follow. The turtle rushed forward as fast as he could. But on land, he was slow, too slow. The rabbit leaped over stones, darted through bushes, and climbed a small hill, far away, safe. The turtle stopped, breathing heavily, watching. The rabbit turned back, a wide smile on his face. My liver, he called out, has always been with me. A pause, then, and I never leave it behind. The wind moved softly through the grass. The rabbit laughed, light, free, untouchable. You should have known better. And with that, he turned and disappeared into the forest, gone. The turtle stood alone, silent, on the empty shore. The waves rolled in and out, slowly, endlessly, and the ocean waited for him.
The Fairy and the Woodcutter. The mist moved slowly, rising higher and higher toward the shimmering waterfalls and the pale light of the moon. Listen closely. The wind is guiding us toward a new path, where another woodcutter waits, and the stars themselves descend to touch the earth. Deep in the heart of the Diamond Mountains, where the trees are as old as time, there lived a woodcutter. One quiet morning, while the dew still clung to the ferns, a sudden sound broke the silence. A small golden deer burst through the thicket, its breath unsteady, its eyes wide with fear. The woodcutter, moved by the trembling creature, quickly hid the deer beneath a pile of fresh wood. After a moment, the deer spoke, its voice soft like a gentle breeze. "Thank you. Follow the silver mist tonight, and you will find a place where the heavens meet the earth." Guided by the deer, the woodcutter reached a quiet clearing. A crystal waterfall tumbled gently into a pool that shimmered like starlight. Suddenly, the air filled with a soft fragrance, like blooming lilies. From the dark sky above, shimmering figures descended, fairies from the heavenly realms. They stepped into the cool emerald water and began to bathe. The woodcutter watched, his heart beating softly. One by one, they placed their radiant robes upon the low branches of an ancient willow tree. Slowly he reached out. He took one of the robes. It was weightless, as if he were holding a handful of moonlight. Years passed, like a slow-flowing river. The woodcutter and the fairy lived together in a small, warm cottage. For the woodcutter, these were the happiest days of his life. He looked at his wife and their 2 children, and his heart filled with quiet joy. But deep inside, a small seed of guilt remained. Sometimes he saw her gaze into the night sky, her eyes following a distant silver path. He kept the winged robe hidden, buried beneath the floorboards. For a long time, he said nothing. At last, he spoke to himself. "Surely, now that we have 2 children, she will stay. No mother would leave her own heart." One evening, moved by her silent tears, the woodcutter revealed the truth. At last, he brought out the hidden robe and placed it in her hands. The moment the silk touched her skin, the weight of the earth fell away. Before he could speak, she moved. The robe settled upon her shoulders, glowing softly. She did not hesitate. She took one child in her left arm and the other in her right, holding them close against her heart. Then, with a faint, shimmering light, she rose. The woodcutter reached out, but touched only empty air. He stood there, breathless, as she climbed higher and higher, her wings opening like a flower beneath the moon. She drifted toward the stars, carrying everything he loved. And when she was gone, only the scent of lilies remained, and the deep silence of the forest. The woodcutter stood alone in the quiet clearing, a single shadow beneath the vast, empty sky. In that moment, he understood. Some souls belong to the heavens, no matter how deeply they are loved on earth. The valley grows still again. The stars remain, silent, unchanging, watching over the sleeping world. And as the night deepens, you begin to drift, slowly, gently, drifting into the quiet, endless peace of the stars. Now, let the echoes of the previous story gently fade away. We are drifting toward a new path, a path that leads us deep into the misty, ancient mountains of Korea, where the whispers of a golden treasure and an honest heart still linger by a hidden pond. Once, in a time when the mountains whispered secrets to the wind, lived a humble woodcutter named Kim. On a humid afternoon, the heat hung heavy, and the air was thick with the scent of damp pine needles. Kim found himself by a deep, emerald green pond. The water was so still, it looked like a dark, silent mirror for the ancient trees. As he swung his iron axe, his hands, slippery with the day's hard work, suddenly lost their grip. Plunk. The iron blade cut through the silence, sinking quickly into the cold, dark depths. Suddenly, the surface of the pond began to glow with a soft golden light. Out of the shimmering mist, a majestic spirit appeared, a presence with a long snow-white beard. His voice was low, steady, and distant, like the earth itself. The spirit dived into the water and rose again, holding a golden axe that burned like the midday sun. Answer me. Is this your axe? Kim looked at the brilliant metal, but his heart remained calm and steady. No, great spirit, that is far too beautiful to be mine. My axe is only a simple tool of iron. Finally, the spirit rose once more, this time holding a worn and rusted iron axe. Look carefully. Is this your axe? Kim's eyes softened with quiet relief. Yes, that is mine, my old friend. For a moment, the spirit said nothing. Then, in a firm, measured voice, "You have spoken truth. Take them, all of them." Kim returned home quietly, and the mountain fell once more into its deep, ancient silence. The Sun and the Moon. Deep in the heart of a mist-covered mountain, where the wind whispers softly through ancient pines, there lived a mother and her two beloved children. One evening, as violet twilight slowly painted the sky, the mother began her journey home. On her head, she carried a basket of warm, sweet rice cakes, a quiet reward for her long day's labor. The forest was still, save for the soft, rhythmic sound of her footsteps on fallen leaves. As she reached the crest of the first mountain, a low, guttural growl rose from the shadows. A tiger stepped forward, its eyes glowing like amber embers. "Give me a rice cake," it murmured, its voice deep and heavy, "and I shall let you pass unharmed." The mother's heart fluttered like a trapped bird, yet she gently offered one cake. The tiger took it and vanished once more into the darkness. But at the second ridge, it was waiting again, bathed in pale moonlight. "Give me a rice cake, and I shall let you pass unharmed." Again she surrendered another. The mountain stretched endlessly. The third hill, the fourth, the fifth. Each time the same voice echoed through the trees. "Give me a rice cake, and I shall let you pass unharmed." With every step, her basket grew lighter, and the tiger's presence felt closer and closer, until at last the final cake was gone, and the predator, no longer patient, claimed the mother's very being, stealing her form, her voice, her place. At the small cottage, the tiger arrived, draped in the mother's clothes. "My darlings," it whispered, its voice a rough imitation of love. "Open the door. I have returned." But the children hesitated. Something felt wrong. The voice was too harsh, the hands too rough. Yet with cunning deception and a dusting of white flour, the tiger forced its way inside. In terror, the children fled into the night. They climbed the tall, ancient tree that stood beside their home. Below them, the tiger clawed at the bark, its hunger growing wild. "How did you climb so high?" it hissed. The brother, calm despite the fear, answered softly, "We rubbed our hands with oil." The tiger tried, but slipped again and again. Its frustration deepened. But the sister, in a moment of innocence, revealed another way. "The axe," she whispered. And so the tiger began to strike the tree. Chop, chop, chop. Each blow echoed through the night, closer and closer. High above, the children closed their eyes and whispered a quiet prayer. "O heavens, if we are meant to live, send us a rope of gold. If our time has come, let it be of straw." From the silent sky, a glowing rope descended, soft and radiant. The children grasped it and were gently lifted upward, away from the earth, into the calm embrace of the heavens. The tiger, desperate and greedy, cried out for the same blessing. A rope appeared, but it was dry, weak, and brittle. As it climbed, the fibers snapped, and with a sharp crack, it fell back into the dark earth below. In the sky above, the brother became the moon, a quiet guardian of the night, watching the world with a gentle silver light. The sister, shy yet radiant, became the sun. She shines so brightly that no one can look at her for long, for she still carries the modesty of the girl she once was. And so, when you look up at the night sky, know that they are there, watching, shining, safe. The Tale of Two Brothers, Heungbu and Nolbu. Long ago, in a quiet village surrounded by misty hills, there lived two brothers. The older brother, Nolbu, had a heart as cold as winter stone. When their father died, he took everything: the house, the land, even the last bag of rice, and drove his younger brother away. Heungbu left with nothing but his wife and his hungry children. At the edge of the village, they built a small straw hut. At night, the wind slipped through the thin walls, and sometimes the children cried themselves to sleep from hunger. One bitter winter evening, Heungbu walked slowly to Nolbu's grand house and knocked softly on the gate. "Brother, could you spare a single bowl of rice?" But Nolbu only laughed. With a sharp swing of his wooden ladle, he drove Heungbu away into the cold snow. Heungbu returned home with empty hands, but his heart remained gentle. When spring finally warmed the earth, a pair of swallows built a nest beneath the roof of Heungbu's hut. One day, a snake crept slowly toward the nest. In the struggle, a small swallow fell to the ground, its leg badly hurt. Heungbu gently picked up the trembling bird. Though he had little food for himself, he cared for the swallow until it could fly once again. Then, one quiet morning, the bird disappeared into the wide blue sky. A year passed, and when spring returned, the same swallow came back. It circled above the hut once, then twice, and dropped a single dark seed into Heungbu's hands before flying away again. Curious, Heungbu planted the seed beside his home, and then something remarkable began to happen. The vine started to grow. It climbed along the fence and curled gently around the roof. It stretched higher and higher, as if reaching for the sky. Soon, large gourds hung from the vine, round and heavy, shining softly in the sunlight. That evening, Heungbu and his wife carefully cut open the first gourd. The shell split open, slowly, and suddenly, bright gold coins spilled across the floor like a flowing river of light. They stood in quiet amazement. When they opened the second gourd, fine silks, pearls, and beautiful treasures poured out. Their small home filled with warmth and laughter. Kindness, it seemed, had quietly grown into a miracle. But in a small village, news travels quickly. When Nolbu heard of his brother's fortune, jealousy burned inside him. "If he can become rich," he muttered, "then so can I." So Nolbu broke a swallow's leg on purpose. Just as he expected, the bird later returned and left behind a seed. Greedily, he planted it beside his grand house. The vine grew quickly, just as before. Large gourds appeared, heavy and full. Nolbu smiled to himself. "This will make me the richest man alive." He climbed onto the roof and cut open the first gourd. But instead of gold, a thick wave of sticky mud burst out, spreading across his fine clothes. "What is this?" he shouted. His face twisted with anger, but even then his greed did not fade. "If the first one was wrong," he muttered, "then the next one must be the real treasure." Without hesitation, he rushed to the second gourd. When it opened, a group of rough thieves leapt out, laughing loudly. They grabbed his treasures and vanished into the night. Nolbu staggered back, his heart pounding. For a brief moment, fear flickered in his eyes, but soon his greed returned once more. "No, there must still be something good," he said, his voice trembling. "There has to be." Driven by his stubborn desire, he tore open the final gourd, and suddenly, a group of mischievous goblins burst out. They ran wildly through the yard, smashing pots, breaking walls, and tearing apart his proud house until nothing remained. At last, Nolbu sat alone in the dust of what had once been his home. His wealth was gone, his pride was gone, and for the first time in his life, he understood how empty greed truly was. Ashamed and trembling, he walked slowly to Heungbu's house. When he reached the gate, he fell to his knees. "Brother, I was wrong. I was cruel. Can you forgive me?" Heungbu did not hesitate. He stepped forward and gently helped his brother stand. "You are my brother," he said softly. "Come inside." From that day on, the two brothers lived together in peace. Nolbu's heart slowly softened, and he spent the rest of his life helping those in need. And in that quiet village, beneath the whispering vines and the soft evening sky, the brothers came to understand a simple truth. The greatest treasure in the world is not gold, but kindness.